Hey, what's going on everyone? Today we are going to go over 6 more compositions that I've added to the TFT, to the PBE tier list. And those are going to be Jinx, Ashe, Samira, Draven, Wukong, and Kayle. And those are going to be Jinx, Ashe, Samira, Draven, Wukong, and Kayle. And these are mainly going to be rerolls. There are 5 reroll comps, but there's still 1 4-cost comp in Samira. And rerolls are just very dominant right now because supers exist. And there are just a ton of different carries that people can kind of try on PBE before they balance everything for the final release. And that is going to be on December 7th. But we are going to get into how to play each and every one of these compositions. First one we're going to go over is Jinx Reroll. This is the Anima squad synergy. And this is pretty much the bunny synergy. So this is obviously something that I'm really excited about. And we're going to focus on Jinx first. So Jinx Reroll, she likes AP and attack speed. There are a couple units like this. And I believe the other one is Kai'Sa. And I actually made a video on that on Double Trouble Kai'Sa, where you use an attack speed and ability power build, which worked really well for me in that game. But for this one, we're going to focus on Jinx. Jinx is just going to be a reroll at level 6 comp, and you're also going to focus on Riven carry. But before we get into how to play this, let's run over the rest of the units. We have Sylas and Nasus because they're cheap units who are also Anima squads. We have Vi who gives Brawler, we have Echo who gives Prankster, and we have Vayne who's also the 5th Anima squad. So now on to how to play it. You really just want Jinx 3 obviously because you're playing like a Jinx reroll comp, but you can use Lulu or Lux, which are 1-cost units, to hold items for Jinx until you get her. And the way you play this, you're actually going to slow roll at different intervals. So first, you're going to do it at level 5. This is going to get you your 3-star 1-cost Anima squad units such as Sylas and Nasus. And then you want to level up to level 6 to hit Jinx 3 because the odds are better at Jinx 3. So I'm not saying you are going to 3-star Sylas and Nasus every single game, but if the option's available, definitely go for it. As you're re-rolling for Sylas and Nasus, you do hit a decent amount of Jinxes as well. But let's say you have 8 Sylases and 8 Nasuses, but you want more Jinxes. Like you could potentially level up to 6 a little bit earlier. It really depends on what you want to do. Another way to play if you don't have a lot of Nasuses and Sylases is just go straight to level 6 and re-roll for Jinx 2 right away. And then after that, go for Riven at level 7 and then get both Jinx 3 and Riven 3. Items for Jinx right now, Rage Blade's super important and Hodge is good for giving both AD and AP. Archangels is going to be great for scaling, Death Cap, Jeweled Gauntlet great for just general AP, Spear of Shojin gets her to cast a lot more, and Hextech Gunblade is okay if you want like some sustain on her if you're facing a lot of units that damage her, such as units that can hit the backline, such as Aurelion Soul, people who use Hackerim, for example, things like that. As for all your other items, you just really want to focus on tank items. So like Riven's going to be your main tank, but if you get extra tank items, just throw them on Echo because not much else is really going to matter. If you do get 3-star Sylas and Nasus, Nasus can use just literally any items, so you just throw them on him. After that, for augments, Get Excited and Everyone Goes Boom is obviously the 2 best ones for a Jinx comp because they revolve around Jinx. But if you have other secondary carries, then the Everyone Goes Boom augment is also pretty good for everyone else. Onto the next build, we have Ashe Reroll. So Ashe Reroll is going to be complemented by Renekton because they're both Laser Core 1-cost units, and they luckily use completely opposite items. You're also going to go for 4 Brawler because that's really going to load up your Rage Blade on your Ashe. And then you just want to run an extra recon to help Ashe out, such as Ezreal. And in this particular build you have here, we're also running Aegis. Now that we know the units that go into the composition, let's get into how to play it. So obviously, since we're going for Ashe and Renekton, we're going to go for the 1-cost reroll leveling pattern. So there are 2 approaches to this. You could either do a hyper roll or a slow roll. So hyper rolling you want to do at stage 3, 1 at level 4. And you normally do this if you naturaled around like 6 Ashes or more, or if your econ is very high, such as like above 50. If you do like perfect loss streak, like maybe you even have an econ augment, you could get up to like 60 gold at 3-1. But in most other cases, you'll have like 40 or 50 gold at that time. Alternatively, for the slow rolling method, you can wait until you hit level 5 on stage 3-2 and then roll down to 50 gold every single turn until you hit your desired units. Like most other 1-cost reroll comps, this is typically played if you have the hero augment for your carry. After that, you just level up for useful units such as Sejuani and Aegis units. Items for Ashe, I think the most important item is Rage Blade, and then after that, we like Last Whisper, Giant Slayer, Runon's Deathblade, and Infinity Edge. Renekton just pretty much likes any tank item, so he's very similar to maybe like a Pantheon from last set, Warmogs, Bloodthirster, Sunfire, all going to do well on him, but literally any bruiser item, any tank item is going to do well, like Titan's Resolve works too, and there are all sorts of different directions you could go for there. You mainly want to prioritize the Rage Blade, and then after that, most things are kind of like gravy. Going on into the next build, we have Draven Reroll. This is pretty much like the Superman Draven comp that you've been hearing about. The two main units you care about here is Lee Sin as a main tank and Draven as a main damage dealer. And then Draven just likes the pure raw attack damage items such as Bloodthirster, Infinity Edge, and Last Whisper. Doesn't really need as much attack speed, but it's obviously still nice on him. But mainly focus on the attack damage. Lee Sin can pretty much use any tank items, but just the generics work. Warmog Stoneplate always going to be a classic, and then Sunfire Cape, if you need the anti-heal, it's right there for you. To play this comp, you want to do the 2-cost reroll leveling strategy, where you level up to level 6 at stage 3-2, where you roll for Draven 2-star and then get at least 1 Jax and Wukong for mech. While you're there, you can roll for 3-star supers as well, such as the Malphite, Lee Sin, and Gangplank. Since you're looking for a lot of 3-star 2-costs in this comp, rolling at 6 is the best, because we have Lee Sin, Malphite, and Draven all there for you. So the only reroll that you're kind of trying to hit that isn't a 2-cost unit is Gangplank. Obviously, Jax 3 is great as well, but normally you don't have the economy to find that. After that, you just try to level up, and then add in 5 mechs once you can find a Leona. Again, we have Draven item recommendations down here, so other things that we did not list up there before is Deathblade, Hodge, Rageblade, and Giant Slayer. All those work fine on Draven. Do keep in mind they did nerf Rageblade on PBE so far, so compared to previous sets, Rageblade is definitely a weaker item right now. Next build up is a first non-reroll comp we have. Look at all the purple we see here. So Echo, Sejuani, Zac, Samira, like we have 2 legendaries as well, Aphelios and Nunu. So this is definitely going to be the standard leveling pattern that we're going to be using. And I will be updating the leveling guide for the new set in the first couple of days. So do look out for that if you guys are curious at how leveling is going to be different in set 8. In this build, we're going to be focusing on Samira as the primary carry and then Zac as the primary tank. Of course, if you get 2-star Aphelios, itemize him. If you get a 2-star Nunu, itemize him as well. But that's more of a luxury, so it's like, I'm not going to tell you what you do when you win the lottery, for example, because, I mean, it's pretty, like, a pretty good situation to be in. The only requirements for this comp is having a mix of attack damage and healing items for Samira. So here we have the Hand of Justice, but of course you could get a healing augment such as Celestial Blessing as well. That works great for her too. Item holders are the typical Ashe, Kayle, Sivir, Senna, since you're kind of just pivoting into this comp later on. You could use a lot of the reroll early game carries as item holders for your Samira. So again, this comp focuses on 4-cost units, so level 8 is going to be the best time to roll for that. So you try to play your strongest board until 4-5, and then that's where you level up to 8 and then roll it down to try to hit all these 4-cost units. Mainly Samira and Zac are the most important. Sometimes you also hit a 1-star legendary, so if you do get an Aphelios at that point, obviously make use of that as well. The most important thing about this comp is to make sure you have a strong front line. Like, let's look at the comp here. We have 2 units in the back and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units in the front. So we have 6 tanks, 2 damage dealers. Not really too many support units. It's mainly just tanks and 2 DPS. More so 1 DPS because Aphelios is more of a bonus, right? That's a very important thing to keep in mind in this comp, is that you're really just frontlining for your Samira for her to dish out all the damage. For items, we have them down here. Last Whisper, Hodge, Infinity Edge, Giant Slayer, Deathblade, Rageblade, Runons for Samira. For Aphelios, Deathblade, IE, Rageblade, and then just generic frontline tank items on Zac, Echo, and Sejuani. So that could be like Stoneplate, Warmogs, as you saw up here. It could be a Bramble Vest, Dragon Claw, depending if you're facing a lot of attack damage or ability power. It could be stuff like Titan's Resolve, Protector's Vow. I'm sure I'm missing a couple others as well. Down here, we list out the core as well. So as long as you have 2 sure shots and like just random frontline units, like they don't have to synergize with Samira, right? Obviously, it's great if they do, but they really don't have to. You just need at least 2 sure shots, and then after that, you're good to go. Samira's other trait is Underground, but you look at that here, and like we're not actually using Underground at all, so it's like you really just need 2 sure shot, and then you're good to go from there. Also, for aces, make sure not to play more than 1 ace, unless you're playing 4. So it's kind of like the ninja trait of the past. It only works when you either have 1 or 4 active. Let's move on into Wukong reroll. So this one's a bit of a weird build because we think of Wukong, we think attack damage, we think of Bonky Kong, But he's got a new build now. He's actually AP in this set. So we're going to be going Bloodthirster, Jeweled Gauntlet, Hat on him. And then we're also going to use Set as a tank in a Mecha Prime build. We finish this up with other defenders. And then after that, you're pretty much good to go. So to play this, you just do 1-cost reroll leveling patterns. So you can hyper roll at 3-1 at level 4. Or slow roll at level 5 for Wukong 3. And of course, you do need the hero augment for your carry if you do try this. I mean, I'm not saying you can't do it if you don't have the hero augment, but it's like, it definitely really helps, and it's a lot more forgiving if you do so. But I mean, you still could try it without it, but let me know how it goes and try to compare the power levels between the two. The augment specifically that's really strong is called the Cyclone Hero Augment. It's the only hero augment that solo buffs Wukong, and if you're going for a Wukong comp, obviously that's going to be the best thing for you. But the objective is to get Wukong 3-star as soon as possible with the hyper roll or slow roll method, and then you just level up and put 5 mechas in, typically Leona at late levels, because it's really hard to find Leona before level 9s. Oftentimes, a trick you could do to get her is just take her off the late game carousel and don't really care about the item, and that's one way to get her if you already have 3 items for your Wukong. Speaking of items for Wukong, let's go over that right now. We have Hand of Justice, we have Jeweled Gauntlet, Rabadon's Death Cap, Ionic Spark. This is actually my favorite, Ionic Spark, and then you have Archangels and Bloodthirster if you need healing. Of course, if you get healing augments, you could go for like triple damage instead. Now on to the next and final build, I believe. We have Kayle Reroll. And of course, all the other comps that we went over last week, if you guys didn't check that out, we'll leave a card up here. But we go over Talon, Duelist Reroll, Threats, Camille Reroll, Vayne, Soraka, Admin, Gangplank Supers, and Zoe Reroll. And of course, all this can be found on my website at bunnymuffins.lol/PBE. But let's go back to Kayle Reroll. This one's going to be called like the Super Kayle comp, I guess, because we are going to be using supers here. And then after that, we're going to complement her with 4 duelists. So the reason why some reroll comps work really well with supers and some don't is because they share some synergies. So in this comp, we have duelists, right? Gangplank's also a duelist, so it just makes more sense to run the supers with Kayle because they have shared synergies, if you know what I mean. If we look at the Wukong comp, Wukong does not share any synergies with the super, so it makes kind of less sense to do so there. If we look at the Draven reroll, while Draven himself isn't a super, Jax is, so you could kind of have the Brawler synergy between the Jax and the Lee Sin. So it kind of like shifts around a bit like that. Sometimes you could use a super, sometimes you can't, and sometimes you could just use them anyways if you just know you're going to hit all the 3-stars. For example, if you just hit a lot of your certain units, or you have like a reroll augment such as like Trade Sector, or you have a bunch of champion duplicators. Like, of course, you could still go supers with other rerolls. It's just that on average, it's going to be looking like the pictures we see right here. For Kayle, we like focusing on attack damage items, and then Lee Sin, just generic tank items as we saw in the past. But obviously, reroll pattern is going to be the same as we talked about before for all the 1-cost rerolls, except this time when you roll at level 5, you want to go for both Kayle and Gangplank 3 because you're going for supers. Also, sorry about my voice today, guys. I may sound a little different now, and that's mainly because I lost my voice the other day, so I'm still kind of recovering from that. So this may be the last video until Set 8 comes out. And also, I might have to pause the streaming until then as well. But once Set 8 does come out on December 7th, I'll be trying to stream almost every day at twitch.tv/BunnyMuffinsLOL if you guys want to follow along. But since we already went over the leveling pattern for all the other 1-cost rerolls, let's just focus on the items for Kayle. Last Whisper, if you're doing a lot of physical damage, obviously Last Whisper is going to be great in your comp. And also a lot of the range carries, they focus a lot of the frontline tank units, and those typically have a lot of armor. So that's why you see Last Whisper built a ton, whereas magic damage dealers, they don't prioritize the magic shred as much because sometimes they AoE people and hit the backline instead. I'm not saying that resistance piercing is bad on units that hit backline units, because eventually you do always hit a tank, but it's just slightly more important on range units that primarily focus the front line. After that, just the generic damage items that we saw in the past before as well, such as Infinity Edge, Deathblade, Rageblade, Giant Slayer, Hodge, all gonna be good. So that means, like, you may have noticed a lot of these items that we looked at are the same, so you could just slam these early game and then kind of choose which character you're gonna go for later on, because they pretty much use all the same stuff. For augments, like, I really only would go for this comp if you have the Divine Ascent augment, because that's the only one that makes her a viable carry. So do keep that in mind whenever you're playing this comp. Of course, in every section, we try to list out the requirements up here near the top. So you always should be looking at that whenever you're like looking at any tier list on my site. We have a lot of the comps from last week. I believe last week we did 8 comps. This week we did 6 comps. But if you guys want to hear more about the other 8 comps we already went over, again, I'll leave the link up in the description somewhere just so you guys can check that out. But that's going to be it from me today. I will see you guys in set 8 on December 7th, pretty promptly actually. And I'm actually pretty excited for this set because I feel like this time it's going to be different. Mainly the art style is just completely different, so you could tell that the team did like a different approach than they did for the other sets. In the other sets, they're focused more on gameplay. I feel like now they're focused more on the entire experience of like the player. But again, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving in case I didn't say it to you guys before, and I hope to see you guys in a week and a half.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe, and of course smash that like button. Each like is an LP I gain before the next video.